Today is Tuesday, July 27th, 2010. I'm Lindsay Inge, and I'm interviewing Elsie Baust at the Carroll County Farm Museum. Good morning.
Good morning, Lindsay.
And I wanted to ask you about your time at the Farm Museum. So how did your involvement begin here?
Well, originally the Board of County Commissioners appointed a feasibility study committee, and I was on that. And then after they fulfilled their mission, most of the people on that committee went on to become members of the Board of Governors. So I was on that, and I was the chairman of the crafts committee. And so I did most of the arrangements for the first fall harvest day. And then about that time, the gentleman who was here, can't remember his name at the moment, who had started being the curator, decided that it was more than he could handle, and the chairman of the Board of Governors called me and asked me if I would consider doing that. And I said that I would, because I had done so much as the chairman of the social committee, of the crafts committee. So that's where it all began.
So what did you do as the curator? What were your day-to-day tasks?
Well, I told them not to call me a curator because I did not have the education or the background to be a curator. I asked them to call me a coordinator. I was a Carroll Countyan, and I was a farm person, farm wife, and knew many of the farm people in Carroll County. And I thought that my value to them would be more in the area of bringing people in from the county to volunteer and to help get the Farm Museum started. The Scotts, who were the caretakers, and I were the only paid people here. So you can imagine that we did everything.
Yeah.
We did everything.
Yeah.
Mainly, though, I lined up volunteers. I kept the records. I logged in items that were brought in that were donated for the Farm Museum. I arranged for special events, and the Board of Governments had hopes that we would have a special event once a month. So, by the time you got finished one, you were already planning for another one. So it began to be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. You just were thinking Farm Museum all the time. So pretty much whatever needed to be done.
Yeah.
Either the
Like
Scots
everything.
everything.
So when the museum first started, was Carroll County still mostly rural back then?
Oh my, yes, it has always been. Of course, now you ride around Carroll counties and you see the farms that were growing hay and corn are growing houses. But yes, it was very much rural at that time.
So a lot of people were interested then.
Yes, yes. And the Board of Governors were asked to ask in their communities. Of course, the members of the Board of Governors were from all over the county, and they were from all walks of life. They were farmers, they were businessmen, they were housewives, maybe teachers, but they were asked to contact their neighbors and see what they had in the way of old farm tools that they might want to donate to the Farm Museum. So that helped accumulate the items that we have here. But then also the members of the Board of Governors all served as volunteers. When there was something going on, they all were here. And in between times, while we were getting the Farm Museum started, they were the ones who were doing the work.
In the book, it said your husband and your daughter helped out a lot too. Was
They
that
did.
how most of the volunteers were? It was like a whole family?
Yes, it was. My daughter was only about 8 years old at the time, and she dressed up in a little guy costume, and she was always my little sidekick. And my husband liked being here, so he eventually bought a horse, who we named Ginger. I had to stop and think what her name was. And we put the horse here. It was a nice, gentle old horse, way up in ages, very calm. And so he would come in on weekends and hook the horse up to the spring wagon or to a buggy and take everybody for rides.
What was your favorite event that you planned or artifact?
I guess
that you
the
brought in?
fall harvest day because we did so much on that first fall harvest day. There were so many things going on, and it was so exciting. We were just starting. This was the very first year. It opened in 1966, August of '66, and this then was in. I think that first fall harvest day was maybe in September, and we did not charge any admission, so we had no idea what to expect as far as attendance. But we had a wonderful PR man, and he did a lot in the way of advertising. And I think we had I have a number here, 5,800 people on that first day. And the road was different then. And I just stood at the front porch and watched as all these cars kept coming in. And it was sort of traumatic because we weren't prepared for that many people. We didn't have parking lots. We didn't have very many people to help do the parking, and we didn't have restrooms. So it was a pretty traumatic day. I remember that day quite well.
Pretty overwhelming, sounds like.
Yes, it was overwhelming. But it was very satisfying, too, to know that many people were interested. Mm-hmm. And the next year when we started charging admission, they came back, too.
Yeah, that's good.
And they've come ever since.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up on a farm, too?
I did, yes.
What was that like?
Well, I guess I didn't know any better because it was not an easy life. From the time I went to live with an aunt and uncle when I was 7 years old, and they were farmers, and my uncle was kind of a taskmaster, and when they went to the barn in the morning, I had to go to the barn too. So from the time I was about 8 years old, I went along to the barn and helped to milk and helped feed the cows. Then he always farmed. And then I fell in love with a farm boy when I was in high school and married a farmer, and so we farmed. So I was very much the farm wife.
Mm-hmm. So did you know about the farm museum before it was the museum? Did you ever come when it was an alms house?
Yes, I did. As a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
When I went to the Church of God on Center Street, they would come out here and have services on a Sunday. And I would come and sing, and the people just loved little children.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I did know about it.
Yeah, most of the people I've talked to, that's how they said they got to know it too, is coming with their church or some
Yes.
other community group.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that Carroll County was not more of a community, I guess, but people have more contact together? It seems like today people don't really just get together like.
Well, we didn't have television.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of homes didn't even have telephones in those early days. So you relied on your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in about 1946 living in a house up Uniontown Road without a telephone. And my husband had gone to the farm to help his father with the work. And I kept hearing a dinner bell ring, or a bell ringing.
Mm-hmm.
This was maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And discovered later that our neighbor on the farm, who did not have a telephone, had gotten chased down by the bull, and was pinned by the bull, and needed help.
Mm-hmm.
So they rang the dinner bell to alert neighbors to come.
Oh my gosh!
So that that was how farmers and residents of the county kind of operated before the days of telephone. So, and you didn't have televisions to take you away from family affairs.
Mm-hmm.
Even in those early days, we didn't have radios. I remember before the days of radio.
So everybody kind of helped each other out then.
Exactly.
So you were saying that you weren't actually trained to be a curator, but you actually had to take on a lot of the work for that. Did you end up, when your time at the Farm Museum was over, what did you do after that? Did you do anything else in the community?
No, I did,
Mm-hmm.
but not in that line of work.
Mm-hmm.
I went to work for a Southern States organization that was a contracting firm, and we built buildings and
Mm-hmm.
put up grain bins and that type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do anything along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
I think you really, to be a curator in the correct sense of the word, you have to have some educational background on antiques and those type things.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have any of that. I did not have a college education. I had a high school education. So.
Did you go to high school at Westminster?
No, I went to New Windsor.
Oh, okay. I went to Wintersville. It's a little newer, I think. But it sounds like all the early volunteers had a lot of, real experience that maybe someone who was trained as a curator today still, you guys would have an edge on them, sort of, because you actually knew what everything was for.
One of the members of the Board of Governors was a forester, so he knew about helping with the trees and such things, shrubbery and so forth. Let me see, I guess he also helped to lay out the lake. So each one of the Board of Governors had something that they were specialties in, and so they helped with that. Some of them who were farmers helped to set up the displays in the barn as how it would have been typical for them to be. One fellow on the Board of Governors was a shop teacher in school, and he helped set up the blacksmith shop. So they all worked and they all pitched in, even down to just mediocre things like painting the inside of the house, painting the barn, repairing the barn. There was so much that needed to be done when we started. But the other thing was, none of us knew anything about museums, particularly farm museums. It was all new ground for us. So we were just really starting from scratch. I likened it at one time to going home from the hospital with your first baby. And you might have a book, Dr. Spock book to tell you. But you're there with this new little infant, and you wonder what in the world you're going to do with it when it cries and or gets a rash or something. So here we were with the Farm Museum, and none of us knew anything, so we had to kind of learn from experience. We would go, a number of us made several trips to the Landis Valley Farm Museum in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County, and kind of got some ideas from them. But then we just kind of had to make it on our own and learn as we went along. Like from the first fall harvest day, we learned that we needed more restrooms, we needed more food, because everybody who comes here wants to eat. We needed more parking and people to help with parking, and some way to control people a little bit. So we learned from experience what we needed to do, and so we built on that then from year one on up as we went along.
You were saying earlier how your vision for the farmhouse initially was that it would be sort of a typical representation of a farmhouse in Carroll County, and that it's kind of changed now to be sort of what the higher-ups in Carroll County would have been. How else have you seen the Farm Museum change?
Oh, well, there's so many more buildings now. There was only the one barn. There's a number of barns now. It's changed in so many ways, but it's all been for good. It's all been wonderful. And the wine festival has been a tremendous addition to the Farm Museum. That came after I left, so I wasn't part of that.
Just Carroll County in general. I mean, you've lived here your whole life. How has that changed? For better or worse that you've seen? I guess in a lot of ways, but
yes, in a lot of ways. Mostly, as far as I see it, from the standpoint of losing so much of the good farming land. The farm that I lived on when I was a little girl on Royer Road was a wonderful farm. Now it's all houses. My husband and I lived on a farm on Uniontown Road, which was beautiful farmland. Now it's in houses. And there's so many places around the county. And, I'm amazed when I drive around and see all the houses. As you're going out New Windsor Road and look up over the road towards Uniontown, house after house after house.
Yeah.
And Pars Ridge, there was a florist shop there at one time, and it was fields. So mostly that's the main change. Well, of course, the highways. There was no 140 that time.
So before you became the coordinator, you were the director of the crafts, you were saying?
Yes, chairman of the crafts committee.
Of the crafts, okay.
Almost everybody on the Board of Governors turned out to be chairman of some committee.
Yeah. So what did you do for that?
Well, my biggest job was lining up the crafts for Fall Harvest Day and contacting all those people. But then I needed to get people, when we had school tours, we liked to have some crafts people in. So we tried to get somebody maybe to do chair caning or weaving or spinning, and always quilting. The quilters were there from day one and are still here. That's been the mainstay. So that as far as the crafts, that was my job. And I can remember when we were getting ready for that first Fall Harvest Day, George Greer was the pusher. He was a wonderful, wonderful person, and so capable. And so I'd tell him what I had lined up, and he'd say, well, we need a few more, so get a few more crafts of some kind. So if you look over the list of crafts that we had on Fall Harvest Day, you can see that we just did about everything.
Yeah. Were the school tours always part of the museum from the beginning?
Yes, we started those right away. And I don't know how you do it now, but at that time, when I left here, we were taking them through the basement of this building and showing them a movie, which a professor from Western Maryland College had made for us. And we would show in that movie as kind of an introductory thing to the tour. And then we would have a guide to take them around. So there again, somebody had to line up guides. Well, first of all, you have to recruit guides, and then you have to train them, and then you have to keep them lined up. So, you had all that to do. But, oh my, yes, we had a lot of school children.
Yeah, after talking to people who've been guides here, they would say that you have hundreds of kids and maybe 3 chaperones with them, and they kind of just let them loose on on everything. But I mean, one woman I was talking to said that a lot of the kids in the early days that came to visit were from Baltimore and Frederick County rather than Carroll County, and that they're just amazed by how much space there was.
Yes.
So I mean, I guess even today that would be true, even for people growing up in Carroll County.
It always amazed me that many of the Carroll Countyans still have never been to the Farm Museum. It's like going to Gettysburg to the battlegrounds. It's right here, and we don't go to see it or take tours of it, but people come from California and all over the states to go to it. So I guess it's within your own backyard. It's not as interesting as if it's far away.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing, I guess, is many Carroll Countyans are familiar with farming, and they think, oh, I don't need to go there and see how farming used to be done. I know.
Yeah. So do you know if there's a lot of farm museums around here, or?
Well, I think, let me see, Baltimore County, I think, they have a fire museum. I'm not sure they have a farm museum. There is one other county around that has one, but I'm not sure. No, they aren't that plentiful.
Yeah. So I mean, you think people could come? It's such a unique place to visit.
Well, yes, and it's just such a nice place to be. Now, I was here with a group, you heard me say, on Friday, and the temperature was 100 degrees, 95. We sat under the trees and had lunch, and it was delightful. There was a breeze came through, and it wasn't hot at all. And when I worked here, I used to say that it was a wonderful place to be in the summertime because there was always a breeze and it was always cool.
Yeah.
So it's such a wonderful place to come and just enjoy the outside, but even if you don't go through the house, and even if you're not interested in all those tools and machinery that used to be used, it's just a nice kind of place to come and have a picnic.
Yeah, it was beautiful, especially the gardens and everything.
Yes.
Around. Well, is there anything else about growing up in Carroll County that you would want to talk about?
Oh, well, never having lived any place else, it's hard for me to compare. But I thought it was a great place to grow up, and I thought living on the farm and raising my children on the farm was a great place to be. It just, children growing up on a farm have chores. They don't have to look for something to do and go out and get in trouble. So it's kind of different. So I was happy to grow up in Carroll County.
Did your children stay in Carroll County?
I have 2 children. My son lives in Carroll County. My daughter lives in Lutherville.
So they still stay kind of nearby?
Yes, she's very close.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I have any more specific questions. Is there anything else about the Farm Museum that
No, you do know the history of what it was before
Mhm.
the almshouse and about the closing of it. You know, I live at Carroll Lutheran Village, and my kids tease me about living at the home, in quotations, as in old folks' home, and that's what this was originally. It was the old folks' home. So, you know, as it became unnecessary to have an old folks' home because of some government programs that had come into being, then the county didn't know what to do with it, and that's why they appointed the feasibility committee to study. And you know, as we studied it and looked over the property here, we decided that it was the best thing to do with it. Had we not decided on being a farm museum, it may have become housing. However, I think the county commissioners had determined that it was to be open space, and so having a farm museum made it open space. But we thought it was a good educational place to bring kids, and a good place. People at that time were looking for places to go. I guess they still are. Maybe not so much since this economic slump. But at that time, people were looking for some place to go on a weekend, and we thought we were providing a place for that. So,
well,
I think we made a good decision to make it into a farm museum, and the staff that's been here since then has done a wonderful job.
Yeah, I think people would take for granted that, you know, especially since so many people around here are from farming families, they kind of take it for granted that other people maybe would never even know anything about it if there weren't a museum for it, and they couldn't see some of these things.
Oh, this is true, and you know, there's a couple generations out there now who don't know how corn was planted years ago, or hay was made, or wheat was thrashed, and or what kind of tools were used. So it's a wonderful place to provide that educational tool for them.
I mean, I've grown up in Carroll County for 19 years, and when I came here when I was as a kid, this was the first time I had seen some of the farming equipment that
I'm sure.
Yeah, some other people would see every day.
And Springhouse, what did Springhouse mean to you? So, yes.
Well, so if there's nothing else that you want to bring up, I would just have one more question, if that's okay. What advice would you have for someone who was just starting out in Carroll County?
Oh my, that's a hard question.
Or, yeah, that is kind of general, but like...
Perhaps to get involved in things in the county so you know what's going on. You know, people move in and then they criticize what the commissioners are doing, or they criticize the Farm Museum Board. If you get involved, you're more likely to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So I think it's important to get involved.
Yeah, and you certainly have been involved
Yes.
in things. So thank you so much for talking to me.
It was
This
nice
is really
meeting
good.
you,
Yeah,
and
it was
thank
nice
you for
meeting
having me.
Thank you.